Okay, thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the TTPP committee, and particular welcome to new members to the committee. Look forward to your contributions. We might just very briefly whiz around the attendance, shall we say, and very briefly introduce ourselves and those who are in the room, including staff, so that we all know who's doing what. And I'll start. I'm Rex Williams. I've been involved with this committee since 2018 and enjoying every minute of it, I should say. Originally a civil engineer, I had a lot to do with planning matters over the years and governance of various types. I'm based in Christchurch, but over here quite frequently. Paul.
Kia ora, Paul Madgewick. So I'm the chairman of McCarthy and Ngāti Mahaki, and I've been on this as well since 2018. Not exactly enjoying every minute of it. It would be a little bit of a stretch, but I'm there anyway.
Contributing. Oh, thank you. Who would like to go?
Yeah, my name's Greg Maitland. I'm from Hokitika and the councillor on the Western District Council. I've been interested in following the TTPP for quite some time. I do find it a challenge in some areas, but probably a good thing in others. And I'm really excited to be on the committee. So,
thanks, Greg. Ashley, are you online?
I sure am. Kia ora.
Thanks,
Ashley Casson, currently on the committee as a sitting member of the West Coast Regional Council. Spent the last training on the committee as well during my time at Western District Council. As per Kai Whakahaere Magic's comments, I don't know if I'm enjoying every moment of it, but I look forward to a productive outcome on this plan for our place.
Thank you. Grey District Council, Mayor Gibson, could you lead off, please?
Good afternoon, Tanya Gibson, Grey District Mayor. So I've been on the plan for 6 years and around on council since its inception, but again, we all have to have the same comments really, that none of us have really enjoyed it, but here we are, and at least we have got some new members and some consistency, so still got a wee way to go.
Thank you.
Alan Gibson, Grey District Council, 5th term councillor, 3rd term deputy mayor, and 2nd term on the one district plan, and I agree with everything else that's been said.
Thank you.
Joanne Solomon, Chief Executive. I've been at Grey District Council for a little over a year now, so still getting my head around the TTPP really.
Thanks. I should temper my comments about enjoying every minute of it. I enjoy most of it, I agree, yes. Who's next? Mayor Russell.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Chris Russell. I'm the newly elected Mayor of the Buller District. I've got a varied background, really, I guess, described in the mining industry, but covering marine, a lot of other things. Rex, you may or may not remember me. Many years ago, I was selling you coal at Melbourne.
I don't remember, but I look forward to getting reacquainted. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Who's?
Councillor Webb.
Yeah, Councillor Webb. Linda Webb, is it? Yes, thanks, Councillor.
I obviously newly on this committee, taking over actually from my dad, Graham Naylon, that you all know. Yeah, 2nd term on council, and I'm also an RMA commissioner. So yeah, got quite a bit of a background in obviously the Resource Management Act, but yeah, have been following the plan quite closely with Dad as well. So feel like I'm nearly up to speed.
Yeah. And our regards to Graham.
Thanks. I will. Thanks.
Yeah. And again, in my case, I go back many years to the cement company days in connection with Graham. Is there any other council laws? No. Could we pick up? Well, Joe, perhaps you could introduce yourself. Thank you.
Certainly. Jo Armstrong. I am the project manager for TTPP and have been on board since early in 2019.
All right. Who's next? Simon, thank you.
Kia ora, everybody. Simon Pickford. I'm the Buller District Council CEO. I've been with Buller since probably must be 18 months, 19 months now. I've been involved in this committee since I started. So, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, thank you. Lois?
Kia ora, Lois Easton. I'm the principal planner for Te Taipotini Plan, and I've been working on the plan since 2019. So, long time there. And I guess that I wrote the plan, so I am to blame for most of the things that people don't like, as well as hopefully for the things that you do like.
Yeah, thank you. I'll ask in due course, Doug, are you available? I mean, can we hear from you?
Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Doug.
Oh, yeah, got I'm Doug Bray, and I'm the senior planner with the TTPP team here at West Coast Regional Council. Been on board since June of 2024, so certainly possibly not in the immediately early stages, but certainly the most recent times.
Yeah.
That's GM regulatory and policy, so this is falling under my regulatory.
Yeah, and you've been contributing. Thank you. Yeah. Chris, I missed out as we went around the traps. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Carissa Duxey, I'm part of the technical advisory team and from the Buller District Council, and have been here since the start of the project with Joe and Lois, minus some breaks for 2 children.
Good to see you again. Yeah, thank you. And Shu is left the room. He's an important part of that, has been acting as planning technician, I think is the term, but also drives a lot of machinery around meetings like this. I think that's everybody. Thanks for those brief introductions. I was rather hoping that Mia Lash might have joined us by now, but I'm sure she will join just as soon as she can. Formal apologies. I'll move on to those if I can. So an apology from Chair Colin Smith, who's involved in the Pike event today. Have we heard from Francois? An apology from Francois Tumai. Excuse me. Any other apologies? That's the lot, is it? I'll move that apology, but those apologies be accepted. Or seconded by Kaiwhakari Madgwick, is that correct, Paul? Yes. All in favour? Aye. Thank you. Conflict of interest. We look for a renewal or for initially a declaration on the conflict of interest or a register and a renewal at each meeting. I'll just emphasise the importance, particularly at this time in the committee's life, for us all to be aware of any conflicts of interest. And the standing orders will get a little bit of reference today as we go through, but 19.7 and 19.8 in the standing orders, we'll need to keep an eye on that, particularly as decisions and or mediation thoughts come along. But Simon, you know a bit more about this, and you've probably briefed your council in the last little while. Would you mind giving us a brief explanation of your views, your thoughts?
Thank you, Rex. I wouldn't put myself as an expert in conflicts of interest, but and so apologies for those around the table who probably know a little bit more than I do. But I'll just give you an overview of the sort of things that I've talked to the new council about. So many of you will be aware of this, but obviously if we don't manage conflicts of interest appropriately, we do risk legal challenge, and the judicial review process is costly and time consuming. So I guess over the next couple of minutes, I'll just talk about conflicts of interest in general. They sort of fall into sort of 2 categories around bias and predetermination. So the committee just needs to bear that in mind each time you're involved as members in decision making. So bias is really where You as a decision maker allow yourself to be influenced by factors other than the facts provided or the arguments offered in discussion around an issue. So the rules around bias is that there is no bias, but also there's no appearance of bias, and that's the other key aspect of this. You may feel you're not biased in any way, but there may be a perception in the community, and that's where we can come unstuck. So obviously that involves matters of perception and degree. So that's just something to bear in mind. Predetermination is where you as a decision maker are forming an opinion on a specific issue that then you either are or seeming to be of a closed mind to any argument or point of view to the contrary. So you just need to bear those in mind. So bias and predetermination are slightly different aspects, but they all sort of fall under that umbrella of conflict of interest. So the key thing to do is to think about it clearly before you arrive at a meeting, and disclose anything that you actually have as a real or perceived conflict of interest. And I guess the best practice steps are identify the conflict early. So if you've got a financial interest, for example, around property ownership, or a business tie to around a decision, or indeed a non-financial interest, so it may be you've made strong public statements about something, and this comes back to the predetermination, because someone can point to a media article or a statement that you've made in public that you're coming in with a predetermination on a decision. You need to think about that perception of risk. Ultimately, it's up to the committee members to individually assess their conflict of interest. You get to decide whether you're actually conflicted or not. But I think the test would be, would a reasonable person think that bias exists? Record everything. So if you are disclosing, if you are documenting if you do think you're conflicted, document it, because then you're covered. You've actually disclosed it, and then there's a record of that, so you can always point back to that if there's ever a challenge. And if you're in doubt, seek advice. So seek advice from the chair or from staff before the meeting. Then that's the ideal way of doing it. And all of this obviously just goes to that heart of maintaining transparency and maintaining public confidence in the process and the openness of the committee. So that's a kind of, in a nutshell, what conflicts are about. Many of you know this already, but it's just a really timely reminder as we start the new triennium.
Thank you, Simon. Any questions to Simon or comments about what he said? No, thank you. So then I'll move on to the confirmation of previous minutes, standing orders, and as I say, unfortunately, I hope not to refer to standing orders too frequently, but as we start off with the new committee, there's a reference to a couple of items of standing orders. So standing orders, the minutes of the meeting before the change, standing order 27.4, requires the chair to approve the minutes. And so I very, very, very carefully went through the minutes, discussed them with Joe and Lois, and I have, as chair, approved the minutes before the end of the previous committee. I wasn't as familiar with that way of doing things, but that's what Standing Order 27.4 is all about. And that includes the brief section of public excluded minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of September.
Excuse me, Rex.
Yes, please.
Tanya here. Just on page 25, there was an error in the minutes.
Yes.
So the error was that it only had, when we lost the motion, that it was only supported by, it was moved by me and seconded by Alan, but Kai Whakahiri Tumahai also supported that motion, and it's not in the minutes.
Thank you. I was going to informally ask that any corrections be brought forward, so thank you for that. Yeah. Yep.
Page 25.
Page 25. Yeah, I've got that. Thanks. Hey, great. Mate.
The chair, in the minutes, you state what was moved.
yeah, I understand what you're saying. There was moved that the meeting end, the external, that the public be readmitted.
That didn't, I didn't understand what was, stated to either, accept what was being said or reject.
Yeah, it wasn't discussed, except the rejection was just for your advice. And I can understand why you came to that conclusion. That line could have just shifted up. They moved that the public be readmitted.
Well, I said so it was just being readmitted rather than the decision that came.
Correct. There were no decisions coming out. The PX section was for our information, legal advice, no decision. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, and I can see exactly where you're going. Yeah. Any other comments about the minutes? Any matters arising from the minute? I'll move to the first report today, which is the committee roles and responsibilities. Introducing this, I may be covering something that no, I've done that.
Oh,
yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So Paul Madrick was just confirming that what happened with the minutes, and I'm confirming that as chair, and say again, Standing Order 27.4, that the chair approves the minutes before the new committee comes in. So this first presentation, I think it's important to remember, and perhaps for new members to access the order in council that set up the committee, the deed of agreement between the local authorities who are involved, the standing orders which govern how we do things. And just as an aside, sometime in the next few months, we should re-ratify the standing orders. It's worth keeping them up to speed, and also referencing the code of conduct. And again, sometime in the next few months, we will just run through and check that the code of conduct is appropriate. So with that brief introduction, I'll ask who's introducing us? Joe stroke Lois with the... Now, could I just check that everybody can hear what's being said? Oh, and welcome to Mayor Lash. Good to see you, Helen. Thank you. Everybody can hear what's going on? Seems to be the case. Okay.
This is going to be quite a long report to work our way through, because we really want to particularly bring up to speed new members. And we're very happy as staff to answer any questions that we've got along the way. Don't be concerned about interrupting us. If it gets too slow and boring and you just need me to speed it up, please indicate that as well. And Lois and I, as project manager and principal planner, will be sharing some of the information that we're going to be bringing. Now, Chu is going to put up a PowerPoint, but it might take him a couple of ticks to get that started. But I'll just begin anyway, because I just want to give you some background to where the plan came from and how far we've come along the road so far. So if we could start on the next slide, thanks, Chu. Okay, in 2015, some members of the West Coast community applied to the Local Government Commission for a reorganisation and application of local government on the coast. My understanding is that they actually requested that all the councils be unified as a cost-saving measure. But after engaging with all the councils and with other parties on the West Coast, the Local Government Commission determined that at that time, the best outcome was to develop a combined district plan for the whole of the West Coast, replacing eventually the current Buller, Grey and Westland district plans. It was a legal decision. It was given the force of law by an order in council, which came into force on the 19th of July, 2019, that'd be great, 2019. Since the TTPP committee is drawn together from a number of different member bodies, it actually doesn't have the ability to raise its own rate to fund the outputs of the TTPP plan. So the Order in Council also directs that the responsibility for raising a regional rate to fund TTPP will fall to the West Coast Regional Council. So that means that the Regional Council actually employs staff and administers contracts on behalf of yourselves, the committee. And as well as having the responsibility of raising the annual rate to fund the development and the ongoing eventual maintenance of TTPP, West Coast Regional Council also provides some of their own staff input into TTPP, and that is things like help with IT, admin, finance, GIS, communications, yep. So a lot of their staff help with things that are, yeah, just with those type of support roles for the committee. And for that, TTPP pay an annual overhead fee to the Regional Council for all the different support. The TTPP has its own separate budget, which is maintained throughout the year, and the overhead portion actually is shown as an expense in that. So I can show you where that is when we get to the financial statement later on in the meeting. And whenever you have a meeting, a financial report will be presented to you whenever you have a monthly meeting. Thanks, June. This Order in Council, it's going to be a bit like the standing orders. I think we'll keep referring to it. It actually stipulated who the decision makers for TTPP would be, that it would be a permanent joint committee, so it wasn't just one council or other, and that the member parties actually don't have the power to discharge. So this has been set up as a legal entity. The membership of the TTPP, also in the order, is to be the mayor or chair and one councillor of each of the four councils, representatives from the two Pōkini Ngāi Runanga, and an independent chair. So it's 11 strong. The order also stated that the inaugural chair would remain in office until the plan becomes operative, so throughout all this development and hearing stage, to give that consistency. There was actually a competitive selection process run by members of the TTPP committee to appoint the inaugural chair, and that was named as Rex Williams, and actually he is named in the Order in Council, so he's there legally as well. You will have met the TTPP staff online today, a couple of us in the room as well. There are 4 of us. So myself as project manager, principal planner Lois Easton, senior planner Doug Bray, and our planning technician Chu Zhao. So we ensure your independence, I guess, from any other one member body, because we are employed by yourselves. Right from the very start, when we were developing TTPP, staff have worked really closely with the technical advisory team, and Carissa from Bulla told you that she's on the technical advisory team. We've referred to it as TAP, its initials. It's made up of senior planners of all 4 of the councils plus Pōkini Ngāi, and they've been involved since almost the word go. What would happen is Lois and our senior planner at the time would write sections of the plan and say, what do you think about this, TAP? And we got together every month and discussed how it would work for them, because for all of them it was going to be different, because they were, combining 3 different plans together. So we had lots of input from, on the ground, from staff who knew what each of the 3 districts, what was important to them. And they would see it before it would even come to the TTPP committee. So TAP's got this really important role as technical support to advise committee members. So that happened during plan development, And it was particularly strong again through the decision-making process, and they're still there for you. So they're running this plan now in tandem with their own plans, and you can ask them any questions that you've got of a technical nature or any of the TTPP already available. Also, we have a steering group, which is comprised of 4 council chief executives and the 2 Runanga chairs, and they support the work of the TAT to make sure that they're available to be involved in TTPP processes. And they also provide operational and planning advice to myself, to whoever the project manager is, as required. Thanks, Stu.
Might just pause there.
Yes.
See if there are any questions. The reference to regional council reminds me that CEO Daryl Liu is away on leave this week, so it's an apology for not attending the meeting. He often or frequently attends the meetings. But any questions today?
Probably more so just a comment from me, Rex,
Yes,
at this
please.
stage.
Yes, please.
You noted the standing orders and code of conduct and coming back to the next few months. Is it worth us scheduling that in for the 12th of December meeting, noting there's 4 new members around the table to flesh those out, agree to them and have them front of mind?
I'd be guided by committee members if they would like to do that. Any questions or comments, either from new or experienced members? So I think, not sure about the agenda, but I think it'd be quite appropriate to pick those up early. Both documents are relatively fresh, like 12 or 15 months old. Yeah, they should be fit for purpose. But let's put it on the agenda for the 12th of December meeting just to review standing orders and code of conduct. Thanks. Any other questions? No? Oh,
thank you.
Carry on. Thank you.
Okay, so this is what your role is according to the order in council. It's to prepare, approve, monitor how it's getting implemented and amend the Te Taipōtini plan. By amend, we mean undertaking plan changes and variations. They could either be by members, parties, or private plan changes. So that's why we've got a permanent committee, really, because this stuff is ongoing. As long as the plan's there, a committee will be required. And the committee has full decision-making powers to achieve the objectives. Committee role is to provide best practice governance to support really good planning outcomes for the coast. And it's overseen by your independent chair, who also is a full voting member of the committee. Thanks, Stu. Yes.
Yeah. Question?
No.
No. Okay. Carry on.
I'll take you back now a little bit through the process that we've undergone to get to this point of that we're at the moment with the special version of TTPP. The team spent just over 3 years writing the proposed plan, and throughout that time we undertook heaps of stakeholder engagement, and I'm going to list some on the next slide just so you can see the breadth of engagement, see how we've engaged with the community. We also undertook a variety of research just on some topics that there wasn't sufficient information for us to actually write chapters on at the time, because there also were a bunch of technical reports already available where councils and maybe Crown Research Institutes at the time had undertaken some research, and it was sufficiently vigorous for us to be able to use. And all of those technical reports are available on the TTPP website. So we've kept everything as available as possible throughout this whole process. In January 2022, we put an exposure draft out for the public viewing to get feedback and to inform them of the content of where the proposed plan was going, because we didn't just want to say, and here's the proposed plan notified, make some submissions on it. This was an opportunity to say, have a little bit more last minute input. You've already told us lots of stuff and we've incorporated in the plan, but we need to know, have we got it right? When you see something that's going to be so unworkable or an anathema to you, that now's the time to give us some feedback. So that happened in January of 2022. And then on the 14th of July in 2022, the proposed plan was publicly notified. A proposed plan, that's Helen is. A proposed plan includes what are known collectively as provisions, which is the objectives, policies and rules for each topic of everything that has to be in the plan. And the proposed plan was approved by the committee in 2022, the second iteration of the TTPP committee. Thanks, Helen. And you are the fourth iteration of it. Thanks, Stu. No, go back one. Thank you.
This was the engagement.
This was the engagement bit that I wanted to tell you about, because we do get told by members of the community on some occasions that they weren't aware that the TTPP process was even underway. But we just want to reassure you, we brought all this information to you. You went on this journey with us and you knew what we were doing at the time if you've been around for long enough. But we ran heaps of workshops with councillors, council staff, stakeholder groups and the public. We had lots of face-to-face meetings, particularly with stakeholder groups early on, because we knew that they would be coming on the journey for the whole time with us, all the infrastructure, miners, some of the large groups that have been here from the beginning. We actually met with anyone that was interested, and very early on I had a lovely meeting with the Soroptimist group in Hokitika. In 2020, TTPP staff travelled up and down the West Coast holding public drop-in sessions. Was an opportunity just to make sure that people did know in some of the smaller communities that TTPP was happening, what it was, and we were always happy to take questions. So it was really an awareness raising thing, and we did flyers. I got in touch with someone prominent in each of the communities we went to get them to put up flyers and also to encourage people that they knew in the community to come along and meet with the staff, talk about what was happening. We met in libraries and things like that as well, had lots of flyers and things there. In 2021, we continued with workshops. So 2020, 2021, I guess we did lots of workshops on specific topics. So they would be on Zoom, but we would often have a couple of dozen people here, and say it was infrastructure. All the infrastructure planners came to them from all over the country. So, from as far as Tauranga, I think was the furthest. So we, had really broad engagement there. Early on, we set up a dedicated TTPP website, and all committee papers, technical documents, information sheets were and still remain available on that website. The Messenger also ran 5 full pages over 5 weeks on TTPP. And what we did was we would highlight an important topic, which might have been natural hazards or mineral extraction, things where we knew that there'd be a lot of engagement and a lot of interest and uncertainty over them perhaps. And we provided information. There were questionnaires so people could ask us specific things, and we could also get people's information so we could keep them informed from that point on when they'd shown an interest. We had consultation meetings and drop-in sessions for the exposure draft, and maybe even people who were here at the time may have forgotten, but the coastal and land instability draft didn't go out in the February when the rest of the draft plan went out. We were still working on some parts of the plan that didn't go out till April. And then we had 8 more workshops specifically on that part as well. And then I sent out a quarterly newsletter for years to everyone who had ever turned up to anything or sent in a query to the information email. Thanks, Stu. Okay, now this is just showing you that we are now in the formal RMA Schedule 1 process, which It's specifically for preparing, changing and reviewing plans. That's what it's set up for, make sure that it is a public democratic process. So we are halfway through that now. We've notified a plan, we've had submissions, hearings and a decision. Before I mention a little bit about what was involved in these steps, I just want to let you know that we're all aware that reform is underway constantly on RMA at the moment, it seems, but that the government has directed that planning stops in a number of cases, but they have directed that all notified plans, which the TTPP was at the time of their decision, has to continue through this whole Schedule 1 process. So there's no stopping that. We're on that train now. Next slide, thanks, Stu. So the first half of the process, starting with notification, we received submissions and further submissions from the public. They were all summarised and publicly notified, so they're all on the website. Planners had to review each submission point and make recommendations on where changes could be made in the plan. So they wrote reports. There were some pre-hearing submitter meetings held. Independent commissioners were actually nominated by the second TTPP committee, and each of the district councils in Potini Ngāi nominated a member, and then several members of the TTPP committee interviewed for an independent chair. So it was a 5-strong committee, and then the last TTPP committee, the third version, approved those nominations in 2023. So we had that 5-strong hearing panel set up at that time. After hearings started, 2 variations to the plan were notified, because one was a small ports variation that was going to make a big difference to the workability of the plan operations. And the second, we received a lot more updated scientific information about coastal hazards, and it was determined by the committee that having the information that needed to be out in the public space. So submitters to both the proposed plan and these 2 variations were able to be heard by the hearing commissioners. If they asked to be heard, they turned up at a hearing, and the commissioners considered all these submissions from everyone, whether they were heard or not, plus any supporting evidence. Commissioners prepared their recommendations after hearing all the submissions in a report to TTPP committee in September just gone, and TTPP committee made its decisions on the commissioner recommendations and publicly notified this decisions version that's out now on the 10th of October 2025. So that brings us up to the last meeting before today. So happy to answer any questions you might have on this background part of the presentation.
Thanks, Joe. Any questions or comments of that section? Joe, if I can just ask the MFE date.
Yes.
Could you cover that topic?
When you notify a proposed plan, you have 2 years in which to work your way through the hearings process. And when we hit 2 years, we were nowhere close to finishing the hearings, and we got an extension of 18 months from the Ministry for the Environment to the 14th of January next year. So we, everyone in this room, committee certainly, to meet that deadline by notifying the plan on the 10th of October, the decisions version. So
It's still a deadline.
it's a deadline to get as far as we have now. Yep, to have a decisions plan out there.
Yep.
And Lois will explain what's happening with the plan from here on. But I think Greg,
yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering with this appeals process, and is that only relate to items that are not really sort of operative, or is it certain parts of the plan are operative now that the committee appeals look at those?
Yes.
And
Anything that's in this decisions version, that's what's under the appeals at the moment.
Lois may be able
Lois will be-
to cover that up
yes.
more fully, and Greg, if you want to ask another question on exactly that topic again.
So if you move on to, thank you, Lois.
Thank you. So just briefly to cover what we have had in the plan. So the Resource Management Act is, you will hear me say this many times, so I'll just get it out. This is our first meeting. It's a bit of a straitjacket for us with planning. It's very clear about the purposes the plan must meet, and it directs the matters that need to be included in a district plan. So it has specific matters of national importance. It also has what's termed other matters that we had to consider, the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, and then it spells out in some detail in section 31 what actually must be in a district plan. It also required, and this is important, an evaluation of the costs and benefits, including the economic and employment impacts, to be produced with the plan. So that's called the section 32. And so for each part of the plan, a section 32 analysis report was prepared that talked about the costs and benefits and the options that were looked at by the committee in developing the proposed plan. And the Resource Management Act also sets out a bunch of other regulations that we have to meet in preparing the plan. And I guess the thing to emphasise here is that when we started preparing the plan, and still now, you have the current 3 district plans are still in play. They're very old. They were produced, they were written in the 90s. And so there are many of them now over 25 years old, and the Resource Management Act has changed a lot in the last 25 years, and what's happened is a lot was added in. And so that has had a big effect, I guess, in terms of what we had to put into Te Taipōtini plan, because we had to put in a Te Taipōtini plan that met the current requirements of the Resource Management Act, which were a lot more onerous than what was in the 1991 version. So that's just something to bear in mind, and one of the reasons why Te Taipōtini plan is very different to the 3 original district plans. So just moving to the next slide. District plans deal with matters relating to land. So they don't deal with the air, that is a regional council matter, and they don't deal with the sea. That's a regional council matter, and they don't deal with things like discharges to fresh water. So it's very much about activities on land. They sit within a hierarchy of a lot of now other RMA instruments, and they're at the bottom of the pecking order, to be honest. So in drafting the plan, we had to give effect to all of these other things that sit above Te Taipōtini plan. But, and this is really important, they are about the local district level interpretation. So I would have to say, our very best to try and reflect within that straitjacket, the West Coast situations, and not just the West Coast situation, the differences between Buller and Westland and Grey. So that's that local interpretation. But we did have to sit within the case law framework, and because the RMA now is quite an old act, there's 30 years of case law saying how things have to be done. And as I said, they had to be justified and supported by evidence in the section 32. Moving to the next slide, please. So this is the straitjacket. So we've got the RMA. It's got a whole lot of national level things that the government has said, national policy statements. We've got a national policy statement for Indigenous biodiversity. We have one for fresh water. We've got one for renewable electricity generation. So we've got a bunch of those. We have national environmental standards, which are rules. So policy statements are directive, but they tell you this is what you need to do, but they don't tell you how you need to do it. A national environmental standard is effectively a bunch of rules that we have to follow. We have water conservation orders. There's a water conservation order for part of the Grey River and also for part of the Buller River. And then we have a newer document, which is called the National Planning Standards, and we had to write the plan and do the maps in accordance with these standards. And these were all about this direction, which has been coming from government for a while, about standardising planning, so that when someone looks at our plan, the chapters are the same as they are in Auckland or Selwyn or Maimakariri or Hawke's Bay. So this is part of a general move that the government has been doing for a few years about standardising planning. So that's the national framework. Then we have the West Coast Regional Policy Statement, and I think this was adopted, actually trying to remember the date it was finalised, maybe 2020, and it is the regional level direction. So it's interpreted all those national instruments and said this is how it applies at a regional level. There's some plans also under that, the coastal plan, the regional land and water plan, and then Te Taipōtini plan, the district plan sits underneath those. So it has to follow all of those other things that sit on top of it. Moving to the next slide. What's in the plan? So because it's about land, there's a lot of probably more than half of the plan is actually about what the West Coast settlements look like and your town centre form, and the sorts of activities that go on in zones. Then we have the RMA Section 6 matters of national importance that must be given effect to, which means implemented through this plan. So we have a chapter on biodiversity. We have one on landscape. We have natural hazards and risks. And then we also have some things which are the West Coast things. So a big emphasis in this plan on supporting the mineral extraction sector, such a huge part of the West Coast economy. We have transport and infrastructure rules for utilities and also just, how people connect to your infrastructure. We have section on historical and cultural values and their protection. Landscape, the natural environment subdivision, very important part of any district plan because it's kind of the precursor to development occurring. And then we have general rules around things like light and noise and signs and earthworks. So now I'm just going to, if you would let me share my screen, Chu, I will.
We might just pause there, Lois.
Okay.
Thank you. So, see if there are any questions or comments today. Lois, would it be true that all of the PowerPoints will be available to committee members?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And Joe's previous presentation. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions? Lois is exceptionally good, but she's also exceptionally fast. So, okay. Thanks, Lois.
So I'm just going to share my screen and show you the plan. So hopefully you can see that now. So when people go to the TTPP website, this is the front page that they will see. So we have two options here. You can view the plan or you can view the maps. So if we view the plan, it comes up with the front page and there's a table of contents down the side here and you can read and look at any part of the plan. There's 4 broad sections. To be honest, the part 1, probably the most significant part that gets looked at the most is the interpretation section. It's got the definitions and the glossary, and they're very important for understanding what different things mean. We have a district-wide matters section that has strategic direction, that's really important because that sets the whole direction of the plan. Should you want to read this at your leisure, you'll see that there's strategic directions around key things that are kind of driving what's going on land use on the West Coast. So we've got climate change and resilience, we've got mineral extraction, we have the national environment, we have Potini Ngāi Tahu, we have now called land-based primary production, which is what I think of as the farming sector, tourism, and then also urban form and development. So that strategic direction section sort of sets the whole direction for the plan and gives an idea to the plan user about what are the kind of the key important matters. And also will be used when people apply for resource consents. That might be used to help support their application, for example. We then have individual chapters in a district-wide matters section, which we've got the energy, infrastructure and transport, the hazards, the historical values, natural environment, subdivision. These are things which sit across the whole of the West Coast, regardless of the zoning. And so these are that's quite a big section of the plan. And then we have this other section of the plan that is the main engine room, which is area-specific matters, and that's really the zones. So that's probably what affects most people on a day-to-day basis. It's how many residential buildings you can have on a property. It's where are our commercial areas, what are industrial activities allowed to do, that kind of thing. So that's the zones part of the plan. And then I'll move now to just show you the maps. So just up in this top left corner here, there's a little, you can look to view the maps. And the maps there's a lot of layers now. So that was one of the outcomes of the decisions, was to add a lot more layers to help people understand maybe some of the things that aren't written in the plan but might be referred to, other layers. For example, we've got in our non-district plan layers, we've added in where the DOC conservation estate is and things like that. So we've got on the maps, we've got non-district plan layers, so that's to help people navigate. Then we have our zones and development areas, and then we have things like our coastal environment. You can see if I turn on these things, we get a picture that has an awful lot of layers on it. And so people can turn these on and off. There's a search function in the maps, so people can search for their address and it will pop up and zoom in on an individual property and give you a full rundown of what layers of the maps apply to that particular property. So that's just a quick look at the planning maps and at the plan, just to give you an idea. And certainly your staff would be, I'm sure, very happy to spend some time with you just going through in some detail what affects your district and how the maps work and how the plan works. So that they're getting very familiar with that now that the plan is in effect. So if we go back to the PowerPoint, please, Chu. Okay, so I'll just talk about where we are at. Jo mentioned this in the last, in her PowerPoint as well. So the plan was notified of decisions on the 10th of October, and we're now at the point where we are waiting for the appeals to come in. So if we pop to the next slide, please. So the appeals period closes on the 8th of December. So that's different to what's in the paper that I drafted. So we received, or the Environment Court received, actually, because it's an Environment Court process, a request from Forest and Bird to extend the appeals period by 2 weeks. And we received notice from the court yesterday that that's been approved. So the appeals period now closes on the 8th of December. What will happen once the appeals are in is they will all be uploaded onto the TTPP website. And what I will do is analyse the appeals to make that information available to all of the councils, just a summary of what appeals have been made. We have a meeting of the committee on the 12th of December. I won't have time to prepare a paper for you because the 8th is only 4 days beforehand, but I'll give you a verbal update on the 12th of December about what appeals we received.
Sorry, Lois,
yeah.
can I just interrupt quickly?
Yes.
Did any other parties request an extension or just Forest and Bird?
Just Forest and Bird. But the court has said, so Forest and Bird, they asked for an extension for them, but the court has granted an extension for everybody. So that applies. Anybody who was a submitter on the plan can appeal the plan.
Thanks for that clarity.
So it is an Environment Court process, the appeals process, but we will work with the Environment Court as much as we're able to try and get a process that works on the West Coast. So what we will need to do is we will go through the appeals and try and work out what topics have been appealed so that they can be arranged, I guess, sensibly in terms of managing through the Environment Court process. The next step is mediation. And so we will work also with the Environment Court to help find dates that work for all of the people who appeal for mediation, and also to find venues for the mediation to be held. It's a given that the mediation will be on the West Coast, but it might be, for example, that there are some matters that should be the mediation should be in Bulla because that's where the appellants are from. So we'll work with the Environment Court to try and find appropriate locations for the for the mediation to occur. But it is an Environment Court decision. We put forward suggestions, essentially. In terms of, if we could just stay on that slide for a bit longer, sorry. So we will report to you on the content of the appeals and the scheduling of the mediation. And that's, I guess, will be probably your first meeting in 2026. We'll have that much clearer by then. And then the big thing that we will be doing for you is working with you on what position do you want to take in relation to each appeal. And that's because the TTPP is a TTPP committee plan. And the TTPP committee made decisions on the plan. So the TTPP committee is the respondent on all appeals. So that means that you do need to have a position. I mean, your position could be, we don't mind, just sort that matter out. We don't have a strong view, or your position might be you might have quite a strong view on particular matters that are appealed. So we'll work with you to get an understanding of what your position is. Probably the thing to highlight, and Joe may want to talk about this a bit more, we've included the legal advice we've had from our lawyers about this. But if the council or iwi body you represent lodges an appeal, then the view of our lawyers is that you shouldn't take part in any committee mediation discussions on that topic. And that's because you'd be wearing two hats, as an appellant and as a respondent, and you can't be both. And this would also apply if anybody chooses to appeal as an individual. So that's just something to be aware of. And should that situation arise, obviously we'll work with your respective staff around how to manage that. The other thing is that the mediation is it's an Environment Court process. It's quite a closed process. And so normally what would happen is a senior member of staff would be delegated by the relevant committee the authority to sign off any mediation agreement. It's a little bit different because you're a committee made up of 5 parties, and so you'll need to also make a decision about who to delegate that authority to. So those are all matters that we'll canvass a lot more in the new year. If we are unable to reach agreement on mediation agreements on some matters, which is possible, there's some quite contentious things in the plan, then those matters will proceed to the Environment Court. Obviously, the moment we're talking about going to court, it's very expensive. And so our advice to you is to try and settle as many matters as possible at mediation, but just may not be possible, not because of the views of the TTPP committee, but the views and the counter views of individual appellants. Are there any questions on that? I realise that's quite a lot on that slide.
Lois, is it possible for someone to appeal on someone else's behalf?
So the appellant would need to be the submitter, but there's no reason why a submitter couldn't work with someone to assist them on their appeal, just in the same way that people might engage a lawyer to assist them or a planner to assist them on their appeal. But the appeal would need to be in the name of the submitter.
Any other questions?
Okay, moving on to the next.
Sorry, Lois. Lois, perhaps if I could just get an indication of how long do you think that this process might take? I mean, how long is a piece of string? I know, but do you think this might be 6 months of next year, the mediation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's probably fair. It used to be dreadful. It used to be years, literally, but things have sped up a lot. And I think mediation is a big part of that. It's in everyone's interest to get this, drawn to a close as quickly as possible because it costs a lot of money, this process. So I would expect that we'll probably be looking at the second quarter of 2026 for the actual mediation. And I'm hoping that might be earlier in the quarter, that might be April, perhaps, that we do the mediation. And it's a bit hard at the moment to know without knowing how many appeals we get and how substantive the appeals are. But there might be a couple of rounds of mediation. We might try and see if there are things that could be worked through quite quickly and leave the difficult topics to the end. Again, that depends a bit on what the Environment Court decides. But that would probably be my recommendation, to try and get as many things settled as quickly as possible. And then the thorny issues, I would imagine if they can't be resolved at mediation, we'd be looking at a court hearing maybe at the end of 2026 or early 2027. But I would hope maybe to end of 2026.
Thank you.
So we're in a situation at the moment where the Te Taipōtini plan isn't fully operative because we are in an appeals period. Once it's fully operative, of course, it will replace the current Buller, Grey and Western plans. But we are in a situation at the moment, it's particularly complicated at this very moment because there are two sets of plans that have to be considered for everything. So you have the TTPP decisions version, but also your existing Buller, Grey and Western District plans are considered alongside that. And while the TTPP has now been through quite a long process, we've had submissions, we've had decisions, and so in my report I said the weight would be falling on the TTPP. What that means is that in any planning matter, when a resource consent is applied for, the planner has to make a judgment about, does this meet the objectives and policies of the plan? They are going to have to consider at the moment the objectives and policies of TTPP, if it's in grey, also the objectives and policies of the Grey District Plan. So in their assessment, they have to decide, particularly with some of these things might be contradictory, where do they put their planning assessment weight? And so that's what I mean by weight. The weight at the moment would be on TTPP, but the other plan, the operative plans still, have some significance. Once the appeals period is ended, we will know what parts of the plan have been appealed. The parts of the plan that have not been appealed, they will then become fully operative. So we'll have what's called a part operative plan, and the bits that aren't appealed would no longer, two plans will be considered, they will just be what's being implemented. The parts that have been appealed, we continue to have this two plan situation until we resolve all the appeals. So it's just the realities of planning. This occurs for every single plan around the country, but it does make it makes for a lot of extra work for the staff, but also it makes extra work for applicants at this point in time. And so that's one of the reasons to try and resolve the appeals as quickly as possible as we, get out of a very complicated planning framework when the appeals are resolved. So once all the appeals are resolved, we will have a fully operative plan. And as Jo said in her earlier slides, the TTPP committee has a permanent role of implementing, reviewing and amending TTPP. And so we have a list that we'll bring forward to you at future meetings that the last committee made of things that they wanted particularly to watch and see, is the TTPP doing what we thought it would do, or is it going well in relation to these matters? And if not, we might need to amend the plan. We might need to do a plan change. So that's something that the committee was very aware of. And it is really normal. You're in a slightly unusual situation on the West Coast in that the operative plans are very old and they weren't altered very much, whereas it's much more normal in the rest of the country that plan changes happen all the time. There'd be many plan changes a year for most plans. And so we're expecting that that would become the norm for TTPP, that as things change on the West Coast, you'll want to change the plan so that's fit for purpose. So moving to the next slide, you have an ongoing role understanding the planning context. I know that I use a lot of jargon, so please do ask questions and pull me up if you don't understand, and I'll try and make sure to not confuse you. The next step you have is to work with us on a position on appeals, but then monitoring the plan is a really important role, but also deciding whether to initiate plan changes. And in the next item on the agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, a bit more about that. And then also people in the general public has the ability to make private plan change requests. And so there may be some that come through. Those are usually rezonings. That's kind of the common private plan changes, as someone says, actually, what the TTPP has zoned my property is not what I want to do. I want to do a big development. Rather than get a resource consent, which might be quite difficult, I'd like to do a private plan change to do a comprehensive redevelopment. And so those will arise. And then, so we're expecting the plan to become fully operative, hopefully by early 2027. Next slide. Oh, that's it. So just happy to take any questions.
Can I ask a question, please, Lois?
Yeah, please.
Private plan change in the future now, how long would that take?
I think that probably 6 months is a reasonable time frame. I mean, I guess that it's important to understand that we've been through a very full-on process with developing TTPP and these, 18 months of hearings. That's because it was an entirely new plan, amalgamating 3 plans. Private plan changes are much smaller, so I would hope that we would be able to move them through much more quickly. And
How does that compare with getting a resource consent?
If it's a simple resource consent and all of the information is included with someone's application, then they should get a decision within 20 working days. So that's provided they provide all the information up front. In practice, I think often people get further information requests, and that makes a resource consent take longer. And so it can be a little bit how long is a piece of string, but in terms of processing time, 20 working days.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Lois? Okay, I think then back to you, Jo, is it, just to round this out?
Yes, if you want to follow along, we're on page 36 of your agenda. Just tell you a little bit about time commitments. In the first 3 years when we were developing the plan, there was huge time commitment on members of the committee. It was a new process, collaborating and combining 3 plans. There were huge volumes of paper and lots of reading when we were developing the plan to determine, understanding and was it going in the right direction. And then during the hearings process, there were a lot less meetings, less time required until decision-making time, which really ramped up what was required of committee members in September this year. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the main activities that I anticipate in the coming year, and you will have heard about them in this presentation. You'll have your regular meetings, which will just update on progress. A lot of that might be around appeals at this stage, setting budgets, reviewing financial statements, and just ongoing committee visits. They'll probably be set up as monthly meetings, but sometimes we cancel them if we just don't have anything urgent, and so we can give you some time back with your calendars. Lois, I'm not sure she mentioned, but getting your having discussions about what your position on each of the different topics can be will be in confidential workshops, because obviously you don't want parents to know what your reasoning is before you go to the mediation table. So that's going to be a very important thing that will come up, possibly per topic under appeals. So it could be on every single chapter of the plan. We just don't know yet how that will be sliced and diced.
Lois will cover that off in the next paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So there'll be your regular meetings, your confidential workshops, and then looking at any amendments that we're enabled to do under the current regime, and any private changes that come in. So it's good to know that Councillor Webb is a hearing commissioner, and would be interested in knowing if anyone else is interested in doing that as well, or perhaps getting a chair ticket so that they could hear any of these plan changes coming through. Then on page 37, just a quick look at the time involved. I think normally we set up a TTPP meeting every month for a 3-hour section of the day, and we would anticipate that you might spend an hour reading your agenda beforehand and preparing for the meeting. So half a day, once a month for that, or bi-monthly, I think, for a regular meeting. Mediation workshops, I have put in the time commitment 8 hours, and that is for complex appeals on complex topics, where for everything you will need to be familiar with what's in the plan, what the recommendations were from the commissioners, so you can see what's changed in the plan and understand what the people who have appealed, what their submissions were about, so you can see why they're appealing, what they didn't get that they'd asked for, that sort of thing. So if it's a complex topic, then there would be a lot of preparation involved in that before coming together to determine your own position. But some of them will be very simple, I'm sure. And then plan amendments, I've just said a couple of hours every couple of months. So they would just be slotted into a regular monthly meeting, and we'll just, make it work. But we try and just have the 3-hour meeting once a month. And I will put those in your calendar as soon as we get finalisation of what all the council meeting dates are for next year. Then I'm working with EAs to figure out when it's free.
Good, thank you. So, any questions on that extensive paper from Joe and Lois? None. I'll move that report be received. Seconded by Councillor Maitland. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving then on to the next paper on the agenda, the next steps for the appeals and mediation. Thank you, Lois.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen again. Sorry, it's a death by PowerPoint from me today. Okay, so as I mentioned, mediation is run by the Environment Court, but assisted by your staff and legal team. They appoint a mediator and set the locations, but obviously we want to try and make sure those are things that we think will work for the West Coast appellants. Our aim is to have a process that resolves appeals as quickly and easily as possible, and I guess that's just because it is a tremendously costly process, but also as I outlined, at the moment it's quite a complex planning regime, and so that's also quite hard on people who are wanting to get resource consents at the moment. So I think that the sooner we can finalise the process, the better. The TTPP committee is the respondent, and it's your decisions that have been appealed, and we go to just repeating myself, we go to court if we don't succeed on mediation. I should say it is pretty common to be able to resolve most things at mediation. The last 2 plans that I've been involved in, we just got down to one matter that had to go to court hearing. We could resolve everything else, and I think that's quite typical. So the committee will need to agree a position in response to each appeal. And in order to aid you in this, what we will do is we'll prepare what's called position papers. So Jo may have been scaring you before when she said you'll need to know a whole bunch of information about what was in the plan, what was changed, all of that kind of thing. We'll include that information in the position papers as is relevant. So you won't need to do lots of extra additional research unless you should want to. All of the information, of course, is on the TTPP website, but we will summarise all of that in position papers for you. I think the thing probably that is it's a little bit unusual. Again, we're in an unusual situation with our TTPP is because there are 5 parties to this committee. Some of those parties, or all of you, might appeal, and you might appeal some matters. And what we need to try and do through with the committee is arrive at what is the committee's position. So the committee's position may not be the same as an individual member of the committee or an individual party that makes up the committee. For example, we have got some matters where Bull and Westland have had different views, and we've got some different provisions in the plan that relate to different districts, and it might be that when we come to appeals that there are different views. So we'll have the interesting situation of trying to navigate through to find a committee position. As I mentioned before, if you're a submitter or an appellant, but particularly for an appellant, then it's very difficult to not hit that conflict of interest issue with participating in deciding on a committee position, particularly as obviously if you're an appellant, then the committee's the respondent. That's 2 opposing hats that people would be wearing. So in the mediation, that's not normally attended by elected representatives. That's normally your staff representatives who will attend the mediation and will put forward your position, and also, of course, assisted by Wynne Williams, who are the TTPP committee legal team. If agreement is reached at mediation, then we will have a mediation agreement will be drafted and signed by all the parties at the mediation, And that's where you'll need to delegate the authority to someone to sign the mediation agreement. That person needs to be available throughout the mediation period, as normally what happens is as soon as agreement is reached, they're signed straight away. So they may need to attend a mediation, or they may need to be sort of in close proximity to the mediation. I think I've said all this. So next steps, mentioned appeals close.
Can I ask another question, Lars?
Absolutely. Oh,
like the conflict of interest thing, that's fairly difficult when we represent the people we're on the committee for, and we're not allowed to do much about it. But with the appeals process.
So
that's very difficult for committee members, and it's a small place. We know everyone.
Yes, I mean, it is very difficult. I mean, in any council, I think, but it is made more complicated by the fact that we have 5 parties, and it's a plan that covers such a wide area.
6 parties.
6 parties, my apologies. So
Shouldn't we have a special dispensation for West Coast to be able to do that? I mean, only 30,000 of us.
The law applies equally to everyone in New Zealand. So we have to obey the same law as they do everywhere else. So there's no special West Coast dispensation on that. And so
it's a West Coast plan.
It is a West Coast plan, but it's prepared within the law of New Zealand. So we have to act within the law of New Zealand. But I guess that should the situation arise that we have appeals from different parties, we'll definitely have our legal advisors to give you a bit more of a rundown of the situation and how it can be managed. It is difficult. I do appreciate that.
I mean, it could be possible that everyone had a conflict on some subjects.
Well, you have an independent chair, and I guess that is probably your independent chair is probably the only member who it doesn't represent an organisation. So you have, if for example all parties appealed a particular matter, you would still have an independent chair who potentially could provide a committee.
Represents us.
Yes.
Well, that's a conflict. He's a chair of our committee.
Well, as I said before, the TTP committee is the respondent on appeals. So you're in the room as the TTPP committee. It's a TTP committee's plan. They were decision makers on the plan, and so as a respondent to the appeals. But it is possible to say, look, this is a matter where we've got 6 different views on it. We're all appellants. We're not going to take a position. So that is a possible option for the committee in those circumstances, would be to not take a position and just leave it up to the appellant parties. So that would be an option we could look at if it's a very complicated situation.
Okay.
So I've talked about all of this. Any other questions before I just maybe move on to the next steps? So we have, as I've said before, appeals have been extended. They close 8th of December. People can be what's called a Section 274 party and join an appeal. So people who either submitted on a topic or who have an interest greater than the general public are able to come on board with an appeal. They can either join it and say we support this appeal, or they can join and say we oppose this appeal point. And they would have until 19th of January to do so. So it's not until after then that we'll actually have a full picture of who will be involved in the mediation. However, in the meantime, we are able to do some things to correct errors in the plan. And the next paper on your agenda talks about that. So this happens for every plan. The moment it's produced, you discover the typos, the mistakes, the inconsistencies. And so there is a mechanism under the Resource Management Act that allows us to fix minor errors, mostly at the typo end of the scale. They can't be things which will change whether a rule affects someone or not, that kind of thing. They can only be a minor error, and we're able to do that. But also, Joe mentioned earlier that we're in a time of very complicated RMA reform. The government has put in place what is called Plan Stop. However, Plan Stop has not we've still been able to proceed the TTPP, and we have talked with MFE, and they have confirmed that we should also be able to proceed, should you want to, with a plan change to address anything that we regard as being unworkable provisions leading to inefficient outcomes. So we would have to apply to MFE to do that, but we have identified a few things as the plan has started to be put in place, where we've got some unintended consequences. Things are tripping people up where we thought they wouldn't, or there's a bit of a lack of clarity on interpretation, and so there is a mechanism for us to do a plan change to address those. We're also able to, at any time, do plan changes to address natural hazards matters. And for those members of the committee who were on the committee last term, you will recall that when we did the natural hazards variation 2, we didn't have the LiDAR flown for the whole of the West Coast, so we didn't include the area north of Hector in that plan change. And also, we're very aware that the natural hazards provisions in Greymouth are not that suitable for Greymouth. And we have put on the table now, we have a great hydrodynamic model for the Grey River. We've got a good understanding of the upgrades to the Grey flood control scheme, that it would be beneficial to do a plan change to update their natural hazards provisions for Greymouth. So those are both things that we would be able to proceed on at any time. So that's just kind of my
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you, Lois. So I think you've given a lot of food for thought for members of the committee. My understanding is that it'll be at the February meeting when we, the committee, will really start to think about what's involved. We'll know the extent of the appeals, and we'll have thought a lot more about this delegation question.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, I'm just thinking as I was hearing Ms. Armstrong speaking about the time, I think we'd probably be looking at February, early March for bringing those position papers to you as well. So it will be a little bit of an intensive period, because I expect that the Environment Court will want to proceed to mediation quite quickly. And so we'll have to kind of move at pace as well to just get a clear understanding of the committee position.
Yep. And as I understand it, Joe, the dates, you're working through the dates with staff. So that's something that dates will come out as soon as possible. So we're prepared for that intensive workload. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, question.
Yeah, so with the 40% site coverage issue that we're having, why can't that be applied to for MFA as unworkable provisions? Like, technically it's hampering economic development and so forth, and costing everyone a lot of money, and it's completely out of line with the government's tracks to try and get development going.
So through you, Mr. Chair, that is on my list of something that I would like to put forward to you in a plan change. So I have been collecting, I get to this a little bit in the next paper, but I have been collecting matters that are having unintended consequences. That is one of them, but there are some others as well. And so I have a package of things that I'd like to bring to your next meeting and seek your approval to apply to MFE to do a plan change.
So when is that? Because this is, this is obviously hampering people quite significantly now. Like, and how long is the next meeting? Like, by the time we muck around, then Christmas.
Yeah. What would that plan change process look like? How long would it be quicker than appeals?
So through you, Mr. Chair, these are a bit unknown. So that's what I was trying to understand when I talked to MFE. So firstly, they've already got 30 applications in front of them, which they aim to have dealt with by the end of the year. So I guess that was a bit of a message to us that while we might see this as being quite important and we want to get it in as quickly as possible, that they've got a queue ahead of us. However, having said that, when we describe the sorts of things, there's also some zoning errors. There's sort of a bunch of things that I couldn't fix through a minor error amendment, but which we could incorporate in a plan change, which seemed to meet all of those criteria that the Minister set. And they indicated that sounded like that would be something that would be relatively quick for them to get the Minister's approval for us to progress but it would be probably approval in the new year. Then my view would be we'd go straight to a plan change, and then so maybe we'd be looking again. I could see a very busy February at a notification date. If we got that approval from MFE quickly in the new year, that we'd look to notify as soon as we could. But it is a little bit out of our hands because it is relying on the minister, which is in this case Minister Bishop, to approve us going forward with that plan change. Because plan's got process.
And then when it's notified, does it then go through the normal notified submissions period, that same process? And at what stage would it have legal effect?
So it wouldn't have legal effect until a decision was made, but I can certainly, when I bring back the next paper, I'll include a bit more legal information about that. But it would have weight. And I think that's the important thing, that we were seeing some unintended consequences. So getting on with the plan change would be really useful. And I think that would probably, assuming that we can get a reasonably quick decision from the minister, that would probably be in place before the appeals are resolved. So I see it as being a useful, let's get on and do it. Yeah. And I guess the thing is, though, I mean, I think it's really important for the scope of this plan change that we don't make matters that are going to be contentious from a policy perspective, because then we'll attract heaps of submissions and it will become a more drawn out process. It would be a much more, it's a fix and obvious problems of the plan change, and we'd be quite tight about that. And that's where it may be possible, which is perhaps one of the reasons why Joe asked the question, for someone who is a committee member who's also a hearings commissioner to hear any submissions on that plan change. We had a similar issue with the ports, and we did variation 1. We only got 5 submissions. They were all in support. It was able to be dealt with really quickly. So we'd be looking at something like that, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I would have thought with that would have been a perceived conflict for somebody on the committee to then step up and hear some of these submissions.
It is normal for councillor commissioners to hear plan changes, and we did have the discussion. In the program. Yeah. I mean, as long as you haven't been. So the conflict, it's not a conflict of interest to be on the TTPP committee. The conflicts of interest arise where if there's been, a lot of strong statements made in the media or a position expressed, that sort of thing. But just being a member of the TTPP committee doesn't give you a conflict of interest. It's only if you have, or would be a beneficiary of any plan change. So if, for example, we were talking about zoning and it was your property.
I'm aware of that. I wasn't applying that as more so the fact that all of us on the committee have voiced very strong opinions on a lot of these things.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think you probably have on a lot of minor matters. So it would be really great, just to put my heart on my sleeve here for a moment, it would be really great if there were a few members of the committee who were commissioners, because it would be much more cost effective and much faster for us to deal with niggly plan changes and small plan changes if that was possible for committee members to hear them. So it's sort of thinking about your ongoing role. Many councils have what's called a hearings committee, which is just elected representatives who hear their resource consents, plan changes, that kind of thing. So there might be a future for a subcommittee of this committee to do that kind of work.
Thank you. Any other questions on the topic and the matters that came up following the presentation? Councillor.
I was just wondering what the abbreviation MFE stands for.
That's the Ministry for the Environment, and they are the government department responsible for the Resource Management Act, and the minister who is responsible in relation to these matters is Minister Bishop, and so he's the minister on plan matters.
If nothing else, could somebody move the receipt of that report? Moved by Councillor Maitland, seconded by Linda Webb. Councillor Webb, do you want to get your name and lights? Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. moving on to the next paper, which is concerned with the minor error corrections. This is on page 66. Thanks, Lois.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess as I've outlined in the paper, from the day the plan was put into effect, we of course started noticing the mistakes. It's not unusual, unfortunately. We're all human, and I, as the person who made most of the changes to the plan on commissioner decisions, am as human as anyone else. And so there are minor errors, typographic errors, errors where some of your decisions, I should say, have not been shown accurately in the plan. And so these arose, we identified a list in the kind of, I guess you'd call it the interregnum period between committees. And so sought the approval of the chair to immediately put in place some fixes for those errors. They're itemised in the report. You will see they are all very minor things, but nevertheless, they're important. And it's important that the plan is accurate and reflects the decisions that were made. And so I'm just seeking through this paper your retrospective approval for those changes, but also wanting to signal that since that minor error correction was made, I've got a list of more minor errors that I will bring to you on the 12th of December to seek your approval to correct in the plan. It's a really useful mechanism. We didn't used to have it when I was a young planner, but the government worked out that inevitably we make mistakes, and that they're often mistakes that just make it really hard to understand what was intended, or wrong spelling, that kind of thing. So don't have an actual effect in terms of impacts on people in a broad sense, but they're certainly niggly, and has provided this mechanism for us to be allowed to fix them. If an error actually has a significant impact in terms of whether it makes things better or worse, we have to go through the plan change process, and that's why we're looking at this additional plan change to fix things that we can't fix through the minor errors process. But I am expecting to bring you a report in December, and possibly reports next year to fix more minor errors. So my apologies that there are errors in the plan, and we'll keep finding them as the plan is used, but at least we have a mechanism to fix them quickly. And happy to
Thank you,
take
Lois.
questions on that.
Two comments. I went through this very carefully, of course, before I approved these. Secondly, Lois, if you could just talk about the NZTA designation, which is a little different.
Yes. So I probably have to be really upfront about the fact that our designations in the plan are still not correct. So unfortunately, the information that was included in the proposed plan for many of the designations was incorrect, both in terms of mapping and also in terms of the information in the designation chapter. That was something I think I highlighted when the committee was making decisions on this. We tried to fix as many of those things as we were aware of at the time of the decision plan, but it became really evident once the plan was out that we hadn't fixed everything. And NZTA contacted us and advised that in error, the designations were what was in the proposed plan, not what had been the decision plan. So that's the most significant of the minor errors. And I guess just to be clear, if there's a decision and it's not reflected currently in the plan, the decision still is the correct version. And so we need to correct the plan as quickly as possible to reflect the decisions that were made. So there'll be in the next round of minor errors. There are a few other things where the plan as we have it now doesn't reflect the decision. So we need to fix those. But the NZTA mapping was the most notable of those. In terms of its practical effect is kind of negligible in terms of it doesn't, the mapping was wrong, but the only people it really affected were NZTA, but nevertheless, we wanted to get it corrected as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this paper? If there are none, could somebody move the recommendations 1 and 2 on page 66 of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Webb, seconded by Councillor Gibson, is it, Alan? Yeah, thank you. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. I'll move on to the next paper, the financial reports. Page 70.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The most scintillating of all reports that you'll get every month is, I know Rick started the financial reports. In this case, I've got 3 tables, but every other month you will get table 2 and table 3. They're regularly updated for you. And I thought the best thing to do might be for us to go to table 2 straight away, and I'll just talk through some of the stuff that's on there and explain how it's set out for you so that you've got a really good understanding as we move forward.
Prepared by.
Yes. This table 2, the financial statement, is done at the end of each month and prepared by the finance team at West Coast Regional Council, one of the support services that they provide for us. You will see that we split into 2 large columns, and within each there are 3 columns. The first one is what's happening at the moment. So this is the first quarter of the 2026 financial year from 1st of July through to 30th September. And you can see that under actual, we got targeted rate coming through, which was actually the same amount as the budgeted rate, and that should always be the case. There's no variance between those 2 amounts. So this is our income line right at the top there. In the second box, we've got our full year. There's a line there that says forecast with nothing in it. But after we've run the budget for 6 months, that's when we forecast, do we look like we're ahead of schedule or not? So in the new year, you'll see that that will get populated. So I might go, I think that we're going to have some funds left over from staffing, employee costs. So let's, indicate that. And where we've had budget overruns as well. And the budget in the full year is obviously the budget that's been set up for the whole of the 2026 financial year. But the variance is between the budget that we've got for the whole year and the actual that's already been spent. So you can always have a running total of how much is still there within budget to be spent for the rest of the year. So that's what all those columns are. As best we can, the finance department gives us variances in green and red, showing where the amount has exceeded what we'd anticipated, or where we're well under what we thought the expense would be within 3 months. But that's just chopping the expenditure, each expense up into 12 equal parcels, and it's never going to come through that way, of course. So there'll always be some overs and unders each month. I think definitely the most important thing to draw your attention to is near the bottom in the left-hand columns of the expenditure is the hearing commissioner fees expense. We budgeted, if you have a look along to the full year budget, $125,000. Originally, that budget had been set at $50,000 because we had thought that we would get all the reporting done by the hearing commissioners by the 30th of June. And we'd added a little bit of budget in just in case it went over a tiny bit. But before we got to the end of June, we already knew that they were going to work all the way through July. So we increased that budget amount up to $125,000 before the budget was set in stone. So that managed to get in there. And then the hearing commissioners advised us that it was going to be even further delayed, and it was quite far into September before we got their final reports, which means they'd been working full time for 3 months. We hadn't anticipated when we set the budget. So you can see that there's quite a large unexpected total in the under the hearing commissioner fees, but no more payments will come out of that for the rest of this year. But you can see the variance there on the right hand side in red, only variance in red in the right hand column, nearly $380,000. So that will be something that will be there for the rest of this financial year. Looking back at year to date, the only other significant expense above budgeted is the meals, travel and accommodation, and that does hark back to the same thing, having commissioners getting together to determine what their responses were going to be, what their recommendations were going to be, having to travel for that, and also for staff and TTPP members getting together for technical advisory team meetings and decisions meetings in the last couple of months of this period. But you'll also see there are some significant variances in the green there, particularly if you look in the far right-hand column. I would say that employee costs will come in under what's anticipated, but you'll see the consultant, planner and contractor item and also the legal advice item. Looks like there's plenty of budget still available there, but that's really been stacked up so that we've got enough to cover the appeals period, and obviously that hasn't started yet and is likely to start by all indications now later than we'd anticipated, so we might not get through all the appeals in this financial year. So I'm not sure where that's going to go at this stage until we see what the appeals are. Have I got any questions on that? This will be your regular table that's going to come through your financial statement. Yes,
Councillor Gibson.
Is there any estimate at all of what it might cost in the end? Any ideas how long the appeals take and courts and?
Well, we are hopeful that the appeals will be completed in 2026, and if there's a court case to be heard, that might happen by the end of the first half of the 2027 year. But honestly, until we see what the appeals are and you have an opportunity to consider what your positions are and how opposed they might be, we won't have any idea of the time, unfortunately.
It's not a good thing for the ratepayer to report back to them, is it?
That's the case in ward planning, the stage of ward plans, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've got a question, Joe. Oh, sorry, you go, Paul.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Caston first, then Paul Metrick.
Thanks, Rex. Joe, on the budget for the project to date, just over 8.6 million expended. If you track the right-hand column the whole way down, it adds to 8.6. If you track the year-by-year column left to right, it doesn't add to 8.6 million. It adds to just under 8 million, 7.9. There's a $721,000 variance across that.
Right, I will look into that and I'll talk to the finance department about it.
I think that's to do with the current year. Anyway,
when I did my maths yesterday, there's something missing. I wondered if there was expenditure in a previous year that's not graphed on there, or there's something awry. But obviously, when you track the expenditure down line by line across the right-hand column, it does get to the total that it says it is.
Thanks, Paul. Joe, I'll come back to you on that, Councillor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Paul Metrick had a question.
No, through Chair, more commentary. It's a horrible budget that we've faced with there. And the commissioner fees, I mean, a $379,000 blowout is pretty heinous. But we also have to give credit where credit's due on this. That the hearing commissioners did all the heavy lifting for us in sitting through hundreds of hours of submission hearings and all those tedious meetings and listening and then having to distill it all and they did a tremendous job. It was costly, but it had to be done, and it couldn't be done by this committee. So, I mean, there is a reality check in there, and unfortunately, that reality is $500,000. Is what it costs. But bear in mind, this is a plan for the future. That's going to govern and direct us for the next, at least 10 years.
10 years.
and so, yeah. The other worry, of course, which Councillor Gibson was referring to is, we're getting into the unknown territory now of the legal appeals. Strap in and watch this one, because we've got some big appeals coming our way, no matter which way you try to look at it. You can put your rosiest tinted glasses on. We're going to be finding some heavyweight opposition, and we're going, and that legal bill is going to just be just as horrific as what we're looking at here. So there's a lot more pain to come.
Any other questions or comments on the finance report? Somebody able to move the committee receive the report? That's on page 70. Who's put their hand up there? I'll move from the chair.
Yeah, happy to second that, noting the information to come back to us.
Thanks, Councillor Casson. Yes, with the proviso that you get a response to your question. Thank you. All in favour of that? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. I'm moving on to the project manager's report on page 74.
Yeah, we have talked a lot about the process of coming to decisions during September and notification on the 10th of October. I just wanted to assure you that the staff undertook all processes that were required for notification. We've got the website and we're getting local government official information act queries coming through, and several of them have just been referred to links on the website because the information is all there. I think that designations is something that a little bit out of our ability to do anything with. They come to us and we're getting responses from infrastructure providers just letting us know whether they accept or don't what's and how the designations have been mapped, and just dealing with that as they come through at the moment. But you have had letters on it, so just bring your attention to that. If you've got any questions about anything to do with meetings or operational side of things, I'm happy to answer those, or at any time, just send me an email.
That's good. Any questions on that report? I'll move that report be received, seconded by Mayor Russell. We haven't been on the score sheet yet.
We'll give you one, Ray. There we go.
Okay. All in favour of that report be received, please say aye. Aye. Carry. Against? Carry. The next item on the agenda, which was the in-committee confirming the confidential minutes, there's no need for that because, as I outlined earlier, standing orders require the chair to approve those, and I've approved those. I'll just confirm again, so that Councillor Maitland's question, there were no decisions made. That was purely in public excluded so we could get legal information, and that last line was slightly misplaced in the report. So I think the only other thing to talk about today is the meetings. So as I understand it, we've got a meeting on the 12th of December. That was possibly to get information, well, amongst other things, information about the extent of the appeals, but now the appeal period has been extended to the 8th of December. There will be just a verbal update from Lois Joe on the nature or the extent of the appeals. We've got one or two other items for the agenda, but it'll probably take the full 3 hours, do we think, on the 12th? Possibly. So we'll see how we get on. If we can clip that back, we know it's a busy time of the year, we'll certainly do so. Christmas cake, yeah. I will be attending that meeting by Zoom or Teams, whatever facility we use. I've got a very long-standing commitment. I won't be available in person, so I'll be attending that. The meeting is being held in Hokitika, so Mayor Lash, if you're still here, if necessary, the protocol is that if the chair is not available, then the chair of the host acts as chair for the meeting, not chair of the committee, chair for the meeting. But we'll, I hope that doesn't situation doesn't arise. Yeah, yes, Westland will provide the Christmas cake. So then, as Joe mentioned earlier, she will be in touch with staff to organise the meetings, which may be latish in February, but then may well be another meeting in March, perhaps mid-March, because we've got a bunch of work to get through around those appeals stroke mediation and any plan changes that come up. Any other comments? If not, I'll close the meeting and thanks for your participation.